and welcome once again to another Wednesday night right here on the Sports Crib. As you can see, Dave is back, and I know everyone will be glad to hear a appropriate assessment of the Steelers instead of these lame excuses that me and Bill have been passing out for the last 4 weeks. I also see that Bo is here in the queue. Bo, how are you doing this evening?
How's it going, guys? Good to see you.
Hey, Bo.
Oh, man. So it's been a while since we've had a Sue's Corner. And her last corner was right on point, talking about Mr. Decky just before the Olympics. So, Dave, do we have a welcome back Sue's Corner?
We do. And I wasn't aware of this one, but she said, I see that one of the topics tonight is Oklahoma State football coach telling his players to stop asking for so much money in NIL deals, etc. Well, this is the same coach that has agreed to be the first college football team with a QR code on their helmets so that people can scan even when watching TV and make donations to the school program. Oklahoma State head coach Mike Gundy told the AP that he thinks the QR codes on helmets is a revolutionary step to keep the program ahead of the game while supporting the NIL efforts of the team. These machine-readable codes will be an 1.5 inch decal with each player's name and number. According to the Associated Press, the codes will appear on each player's bag tag. Players carry the bags during the pregame before home games or for travel. The launch of the QR codes on the helmets will debut in the Cowboys' first game of the season against South Dakota State on August 31st. The decals will be visible in close shots during television broadcasts and post-game pictures shared on social media. Okay, Mike, I guess that genie is out of the bottle. And that's Sue's Corner.
Bo, I saw a smile on your face there.
How did they get that approved to put that stuff on the helmet? Like, that's my big question, right? Because, I mean, right?
Money.
They're kind of sticklers about, uniforms and stuff. Certainly, they're not as bad as the NFL, but, I mean, they're kind of funny about all of that.
Yeah.
So interesting.
See, Bo, you just haven't come up to the modern way of thinking. You're still thinking back there in the past. You know?
I mean, I'm not even wearing socks today, and I'm already putting them on.
I just might have to watch a little bit of that game just to see what it looks like.
I mean, it's only 1 inch, right? So it's got to be zoomed in.
Yeah, 1.5 inches.
Right? I mean, you're going to have to be like on that guy with a camera for that to even work. I don't know. Seems crazy, but to add insult to injury, right? He's taking the stance of just focus on football, and you're putting QR codes on the equipment. Like, come on, man.
I thought that would raise a little ire. I didn't quite know that Sue would catch on with it, but hey, what can I say?
Kicking it off early.
We're going to start off with a little baseball. And I know we don't talk a lot of baseball, but it seems that this is going to be one of those years when we do not have a team that's going to win 100 games. That's including the Yankees, the Dodgers, all those, Mets, all those teams with the big salaries. Some little ones too, but concentrating on the big ones here. Bo, do you think that this is more parody or just a coincidence?
I mean, I don't think it's really more parody, but the slumps that some of these teams went through was kind of crazy, because when you look at the Phillies and the Yankees, who were on pace to have 100-win seasons early on, went through some kind of impressive slides. Certainly the Phillies, right? They were the best team in baseball. I believe they are again, but there was a period of time that they dropped down to fifth, because they went on such a streak of just kind of bad baseball. Now, I can't say anything because, well, I'm a Mariners fan, and there's a reason I started the hashtag From Hope to Nope, because we routinely are not awesome. But yeah, no, I mean, the post All-Star break slides for a lot of the top teams was kind of crazy, and it gave teams like the Guardians, that I thought was going to be a solid team, really some steam to go on some runs. And that's why I said I don't know if it's necessarily parity, but it was there's the teams that are good, and then there's the teams that aren't, and the teams that are good are beating up on each other a little bit.
What do you think there, Dave? I remember, we started out talking about the Pirates being on a 10-game winning streak.
Yeah, they're one of those teams that have taken a big swoon since the All-Star break. But this would be the first year. I mean, the last 3 seasons, you've had at least 3 teams, and in 2022, it was 4 teams that had 100-game win seasons. And so it just seems to me that in recent years, the teams that had the money, and then you have the team down in Florida that can do it without the money. But generally speaking, the teams that had the money kind of had a competitive advantage, and that was being reflected in the schedule. So I'd like to see what happens next year. Is this, if we get this 2 or 3 years in a row, well, then I would say that there might be something to the whole parity question.
Sure.
But if next year, if we're right back to 2 or 3 teams having 100-game seasons, which, used to be kind of rare, you'd have maybe 1 team. But I think that over the entire length of baseball, and Bill would know this off the top of his head, but I think it's only been 20 or 25 times that they've had 2 teams or more with 100-game winning seasons. So let's see what happens next year, and then we'll be able to have a greater indication of is this due to parity or some other reason.
Well, that's why I kind of say it was more of their slump than I think of parity, because of that exact thing. Is this feels almost like an outlier in recent times than the standard at this point.
Yep.
Hello, Don. How are we doing this evening?
He's muted.
You're on mute, Don. Unmute yourself. No, it's on your end, Don, not mine. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you go. There you go. What's up, Don?
We got you.
For some reason, it wouldn't unmute. So, okay. So San Antonio's doing great. 107 today. It's supposed to be the same tomorrow. So we're in the dog days of summer, as they say.
Hey. Hotter than San Diego. What can I say? Don, we were just talking about that this season there wasn't going to be 100-game winning team in baseball. And I was asking Don, after having a couple seasons where we've had multiple 100-game teams, what do you think? Do you think that this is parity, or do you think that this is just a coincidence?
You know, one doesn't dispel the other. I mean, both things can be true. You know, you can have parity, and you can also have just the way the season turned out. So teams will have injuries. Teams will have guys that go in slumps, and sometimes it just works that way out. Perfect storm. So I kind of lean that maybe there's probably a little bit more parity, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I think your teams in Texas are a perfect example of that. Don, Astros, what are about, or is it the Rangers that are 10 games out? But what's going on down there? Is it still a two team race between the Astros and the Rangers, or it's going to be something different this year?
Oh, it's Astros. Because the Mariners have fallen off, the Rangers still too far away.
Well, yeah, right now the Astros are playing pretty hot. So, but again, the season still got about 2.5 more months left. So anything could happen. But the Astros looking pretty strong right now.
Don, also, while we're talking about it, it seems that the Rangers are honoring Hall of Famer Adrian Beltre, excuse me, with the statue at Globe Life
Right,
Field.
yes.
So, what's your thoughts there, Don? Even though you're an Astros guy, I know.
Hey, I think it's great. I'd like to see them put. I'd like to see them put. Have that out there with well deserved. I'd like to see have one next to Nolan Ryan. He was an Astro for many years, so I think teams should always honor their legends. Back in college, I had a chance to go to the original Yankee Stadium. I got to see. Babe Ruth, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris, all those guys out in the field. I thought that was awesome. So, I think that's something that, Major League Baseball, well, any Major League franchise should do. They hang the retired jerseys from the rafters in basketball. Most teams have a ring of honor around the stadium. And, in baseball, you build little statues out in the back. So, I think it's great.
Bo.
I mean, I think it's great. Like, he was a fantastic player. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with him putting a statue out there. I mean, if you got an icon of the game, I mean, that's a pretty standard practice when it comes to baseball.
You agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, Pirates have Honus Wagner, Roberto Clemente, Willie Stargell, statues outside of P&E Park. So why not? And they could decide who they want to honor with their with the statue outside their stadium. I think it's a nice thing.
Yeah, we got Griffey standing right outside the main entrance at T-Mobile.
Yeah, and it kind of, I mean, what I like about it is that the link between generations. Mm-hmm. Because 20 years from now, maybe the younger people won't remember who Adrian Beltre was, but they'll see his statue, then maybe somebody will help explain, what he meant to the franchise.
Yeah. Being one of the younger franchises, we do have a couple of statues on in front of the park. So, yeah, I can definitely understand where that, especially with the younger kids, when the kids come and see the statues and whatnot. Sometimes mom and dad have to Google who the player is, but the statue's there.
They should put some QR codes on them. It'd be fine.
There you go.
Like the statue.
I'm sure Don would have loved to comment on Sue's Corner, but we're going to give him a chance to talk about that in a minute. So, let's talk a little college football here. Dave, which 5-star recruit do you think will have an immediate impact on their respective teams? I know you follow Penn State pretty closely.
Yeah. I don't have a specific player. I'm just kind of looking at the Penn State has kind of they've been signing a bunch of players, but then they've had a number of players that have withdrawn their commitments. And so I'm just kind of interested in, okay, what kind of a team are they going to be putting together? And it sounds like they could be a top 15 team in terms of Penn State. But, this whole thing with the NIL and the transfer portal and everything, it makes it really kind of hard to tell how a team's going to go. Because I usually like to look at, what are their prospects 2-3 seasons down the line. And now that's becoming increasingly difficult, I think, for the, other than the very top programs, but the, kind of the also rans, which is what I would put Penn State in that category.
I mean, the thing that's funny is even the top ones, I don't know if you know their prospects between the spring game and the start of the actual season. I mean, There's so many transfers all the time. I don't even know how you do your initial ranking polls anymore. You're doing it just sheerly off of what they did last year because you have no idea what that roster is going to look like.
Don, what's your thoughts here?
Well, I know that I only speak for Texas, of course. They have 3 kids that I think will make contributions just based on what they did in the spring because they were early enrollees, and then they also played in they've had a great fall camp so far. There's a kid named Mike January who his dad was at Texas when my brother was there. He's outstanding defensive tackle, 6'4", 290, good feet. And then you have Colin Simmons, who's a defensive end. They went to the same high school. They went to Duncanville High School. Colin Simmons, about 6'5". I think he's about 262. And then you have a wide receiver named Ryan Wingo out of Missouri. He was from St. Louis. I saw the spring game. That guy was phenomenal. So I think those are 3 guys to look for at the University of Texas this year. Simmons, January, and Wingo.
Okay. All right. University of Texas, we'll be talking about them all season and a lot of the show. So looking to hear a lot from you here, Don. As far as OSU, is this the year that they'll finally break through? I think the only thing that's guaranteed is that with a 12-man, I would say that they're most likely guaranteed to make the playoffs. Now, injuries, matchups, those things have to be considered. And the Big Ten is no longer the Big Ten. It's more like the Big 20 or whatever it's going to turn out to be. So we'll have to see how that works out. I know Bill would probably be able to name 3 or 4 players right off the top of his head, but hopefully he'll be in a little later on. So on paper, the SEC has as many as 7 teams with playoff implications. In all likelihood, 4 will make the playoffs. Don, which 3 do you
he just dropped out.
Oh, I just yeah. Bo, you can take it then. Which 3 do you see possibly missing the cut?
Out of the SEC?
The SEC, there's 7 teams ranked in the top 12.
Let me double check where the rankings are. they've changed a little bit. So it's
Yeah, I would probably just name the 4 I think that would get in.
Well, remember, it's a 12-team playoff this year, Dave.
Right.
So, okay, then what 4 do you think will get in?
Well, I mean, I'd have Georgia in there,
sure.
Texas in there. Which Don was mentioning. You can't count Alabama out just yet, and maybe somebody like Ole Miss.
Ooh, okay.
Or Missouri. One or the other, Missouri or Ole Miss could be in there. But
you got a couple sleepers there.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
But I mean, I think with I don't know that it's a lock for some team. Like when it was with 4, when it was only 4 teams, I think it was easier to say who's going to get in.
Sure.
And who's not. With 12 teams, it makes it a lot more difficult because you may have some teams that normally wouldn't have a chance. But, hey, if they have an upset or 2 on their record and play out and win the games that they should win, you could have a couple teams in there like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to have 2 lost teams make it in. Like that'll definitely be the case. In fact, your 12th position may be a 3-loss team.
Whoa. Okay. All right. You heard it here first, guys, on the Sports Crib. Okay. All right. Don, glad to have you back here. We were talking about the SEC teams, saying that there were 7 that were in the possible rankings here for the new college football playoffs. Don, which 4 do you think are more likely to win a spot from the SEC?
To win the SEC?
Yes. Of the 7 teams that are projected to make it.
Well, I got to go to Georgia.
Okay.
Okay. So I'd go with Georgia, Alabama, Texas, LSU.
Oh,
LSU might be a bit of a rebuilding year, but I think they're going to be tough. And
so you'd have LSU over Ole Miss or Missouri?
Well, so LSU is Don's 4th. You have Missouri or Ole Miss as your 4th.
I would go A&M for my 4th.
Oh, all right. Oh my. Okay. we got 3 different opinions from 3 different parts of the country here. So
A&M's offensive line is horrible. They're going to have a hard time keeping that quarterback healthy. But I like. Hey, that's a long shot. If they make it,
we're going to have to clip this little segment for a keeper for a few months from now.
Right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes.
You can always find them by date, if nothing else. So
A&M's always funny because they'll reach out and get people sleeping.
If
go ahead, Don.
Yeah. One of the better defenses coming back is Oklahoma. I mean, they got some studs on their defense, but they're kind of shaky on the offensive line as well. So I don't know if they have the depth to run through the SEC. I don't think. I like Missouri and Tennessee as outside looking in. Ole Miss. Florida's coach, he's on the hot seat. He'll probably get fired at the end of the year. So I don't know. It's going to be a great year with Texas and Oklahoma in there. It's just going to see, how they respond after being in the Big 12 all those years.
All right, Don. You need question on everybody's lips. What do you think about the matchup? Georgia against Texas for the SEC championship?
There's a big possibility that Texas and Georgia will play 3 times this year. You know that, right?
Well, that would have to include the SEC championship, right?
Yeah, yes. The regular season, the SEC championship, and the playoffs. That it could very well happen. So I think that'd be a first in college football to have a team that played each other 3 times. You have to give Georgia probably the favorite status just because they've been on top for a while, and Texas is kind of upcoming. But Texas knocked Alabama off last year, and Alabama knocked off Georgia. So and Texas has some of those same guys coming back. But Georgia is they've had like the top recruiting class 4 to 5 last year or something like that. So I have to give a slight favor to Georgia, but I think it'll be a hell of a football game.
What do you think there, Bo?
I actually like Texas here. I like the Longhorns coming through and getting it done.
Okay.
I like your optimism.
They brought so many people back, and even if Ewers goes down, you have Manning right behind him, right? So I mean, he's just waiting to take over anyway, and I mean, it's probably one of the rosters that brought the most people back. That's even a ranked team.
What do you think?
Offensive line.
What's that?
I said they're legit too deep on the offensive line.
Yeah.
What do you think here, Dave?
Well, I think it's going to go to the team with the greatest depth. And this just should be interesting. I mean, because I would have a hard time seeing one of these teams sweep the other. So I think that you might have a split with then the national championship being a rubber match, which would be perfect. And it sounds like, I mean, listening to Don before talking about the depth that Texas had, I might tilt over that way just based on the depth and plus the quarterback situation. So I'll say Texas.
Okay. Hey, a lot of bonding here going on. I don't know. I had a strange show last week with Demetrius and Mr. Scott. Seems like they were agreeing on every question. I had to check and see if I had the right people on the show.
It was weird.
Oh. So now we can kind of get to the nuts and bolts of this one situation here that Sue had already spoke on. And Don, I know, anything Oklahoma is your favorite, so I'm going to start with you here. Oklahoma State Mike Guidry tells his players to stop asking for more money and NIL deals and focus on football. As we pointed out earlier, Oklahoma State is the team that are having the little QR code on the side of their helmets. Anyway, Don, do you think that this has been a message of more than one coach going into the coming season?
Yeah, so I think Mike Gundy is saying out loud what probably 80% of the coaches are thinking. Huh?
Guidry.
Mike Gundy?
Is it Gundy or Guidry?
It's Mike Gundy. Oklahoma
State.
Gundy?
Yeah. Okay.
He's a man. He's 40. Well, he's over 40 now. But anyway, but I think he is saying what about 90% of the other coaches are thinking. He's just saying the silent part aloud. And I see his point because, he's old school. This is, I think, one of the reasons why Nick Saban got out, because the NIL, it's put like professional sports at the college level. I mean, college football is now a farm league pretty much, so or the minor league system. So I think he's like, hey, we got too many agents. These kids, 18 years old, come out of high school, already have an agent. And he's like, I don't want to deal with that. I just want to coach football. I want to coach kids. And so I'm sure he's frustrated. And, ever since Boone Pickens died, that was a cash cow for Oklahoma State. I'm sure if Boone Pickens was still alive, they would probably not be suffering much NIL, because you got to admit, I've been to Stillwater many times, and it is not a place that's going to attract your 5-star athletes. It's a high 3-star, 2-star guys who they want to develop. And hey, let me tell you, just Gundy does a great job of developing kids. I mean, no question. But it just got much harder, because now he has to, for lack of a better word, he has to kiss ass a lot, and he doesn't want to do that. I would not surprise me to see Gundy announce his retirement within 2 years, to be honest.
Okay. Don, what did you think of the fact that Oklahoma State are going to have QR codes on their helmets?
That's a genius. I think other teams will probably adopt that. You'll open up a program to the QR code. They have QR codes at the ticket window to support your player. I mean, I think that's genius. I think a lot of schools will probably copy that, especially schools that don't have the major boosters. You think of schools like Oregon. Of course, they have the Phil Knight Nike guy. Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, USC. These teams have money, right? But Baylor, they don't have a lot of money boosters. TCU, Oklahoma State, Utah. I mean, these are very middle class type schools. So the fact that the average fan can take a picture of the QR code and donate, I think it's genius.
And in the interest of shameless plugs, you just click that QR code on the screen, and it takes you right to my YouTube channel. No, it is.
I'm putting a QR code outside my classroom. Pay Mr. Hayes.
Well, I kind of see the method to his madness, though, because on the one hand, he's saying, hey, stop talking about money and all this kind of stuff to the players. But on the other hand, he's saying, hey, here's a way that I can get you money. Now let's focus on the game.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know the guy, but I think with the coach now, especially now, they have to be recruiting 365 days a year. There is no recruiting period anymore. They have to constantly recruit, because not only do they need to bring new players in, they got to keep the players that they already have. And so I'm thinking that he's read his locker room, and he's trying to say, hey, I'll work for you guys to try to get you money with these QR codes and everything, but I need you guys to focus on football, and then we can make it all work. And that's, I'm thinking that that's where he's coming from. But I think that we're seeing an example of a coach trying to wrestle with the new realities of the NIL and the transfer portal.
I can't imagine trying to retain players now, right? Because of the amount of time, like how long the transfer portal is open, how many times it's open, and the fact that there's no limit on visits anymore. So you can visit whenever you want. You're probably spending more time recruiting your own players than anything else at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And that may lead to what Don was saying, where some coaches are going to just throw up their hands and say, hey, make me a coordinator.
Exactly.
And I'm done with the head coach. I think what the college programs are going to need to do, they're going to have a general manager in there, kind of like with the NFL. Somebody to handle the business side of the team's goings on, and then another one to be the field coach.
Dave, give me 3 coaches you think are on the hot seat, college coaches.
Well, I'll give you one, and the guy I'm thinking of is down in Florida, Billy Napier, and the reason I name him is like Florida is one of those programs that you always think of is like has produced a lot of NFL players and is the top. Well, they've had 2 losing seasons in a row, and they've had some strong recruiting classes. So I would. He's the guy I kind of circled as being on the hot seat. Pretty or was a prominent program, but when you lose 7 games 2 years in a row, I don't think that you can say that you're up there. And that's going to hurt them all the way around. It's going to hurt them with recruiting. It's going to hurt them with getting alumni to give money. And so I'm putting him at the top of my hot seat list.
Okay. Bo, can you give me 2?
I'll give you one, but it'll be there's 2 in the same location, which is why it makes it interesting. So I'm going to go Lincoln Riley at SC. And the reason for that is, as of yesterday, Pete Carroll just said he's going to go teach at USC. Now, I don't know what he's going to teach. He didn't go into that, but he's going to go be a teacher down there. And if Riley struggles this year, right, and they have a new DC already, right, because the defense wasn't great. So if he struggles and you have a coach that won a couple of national titles and a Super Bowl just hanging out in the classroom, there'll be a lot of clamoring to get Riley out of there and put Pete Carroll back at the helm. So that's why I say it's 2, but it's one location, and could be intriguing.
Okay. Well, Don, you named at least one. Can you add another 2 of it? Who may be on the hot seat?
Yeah. So the obvious one would be Billy Napier. But the other one that, outside Texas, y'all probably don't hear a lot of, a guy named Dave Aranda. He's the head coach at Baylor. Matt Rule had come in and turned Baylor into a winner following the Art Briles sex scandals. And so Matt Rule went off to NFL, and they turned it up to Matt Aranda. Well, they're back to losing the teams they shouldn't lose to, like Texas State. Texas State is, I think they're in the Sun Belt Conference, whatever. Anyway, and they just put a bad performance last year, and there's talk he'd get fired, at the end of the year. Well, for some reason, they kept him. And so maybe the fact that Texas and Oklahoma are out of the league now, maybe it'll make winning easier. Those are 2 teams who would lose to, so that might help his record. But I think the Baylor fans, they got kind of spoiled when Matt Rule was coaching in. So I think Dan Aranda's on the hot seat, most definitely.
Moving right along to our NFL topics tonight, and I'm going to start with you, Bo. And Brady and Manning have named their current top NFL quarterbacks. Brady stopped at 4, naming Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow. Manning, he had 5, but he inserted Justin Herbert in there between Mahomes and Josh Allen. So, Bo, which list are you more likely to agree with, or do you have a list of your own?
Well, I think I think Brady ended up with a 5th with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, yeah, that was that would have been his 5th if he said he had to pick one based on. Yeah. But
so, I mean, I would be more inclined to go with Manning's list. Justin Herbert, I have a hard time with. I mean, I understand he has a nice upside. We just haven't seen it, right? Just like I wouldn't have Tua or Lawrence or Love in that top 5 because, again, like we haven't seen any kind of consistency out of it. And, guys like Stafford and Goff get overlooked, but all they do every year is have 4,000-yard seasons with a 2-to-1 touchdown ratio and a 90 QBR. I mean, like I don't know what more you want them to do. I mean, Stafford's got a ring, and you have Goff that's been in a Super Bowl and to 2 championship games, and we're throwing guys like Herbert that can't win a playoff game. So, I mean, I feel like we should pump the brakes on some of these, like, oh, they're going to be the best ever. How about we just string together a good season? But I do lean a little further towards Manning's list.
Or you mean Brady's list?
I mean Brady's list.
Or Brady. Sorry, yeah, Brady's list.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Brady on this, and along with what Bo's saying. I mean, Justin Herbert has a losing record, and I know it isn't like baseball, on the records, but great quarterbacks got to win. They've got to win, and when you look at the quarterbacks that Brady listed, they all have pretty good winning records. I mean, Joe Burrow is 29-22. That's probably the least among his starting,
and in a Super Bowl.
Justin Herbert, 30-32. They haven't done anything in the playoffs. So I kind of discount him. And then you mentioned Aaron Rodgers. I think Brady's looking at past performance.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way that you can say that today, coming off of the injury, and we've yet to see him play coming off of that Achilles injury, that he's the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. He's just basing that on past performance.
Yeah.
But and that's why I put like Stafford or Goff or somebody's in that conversation there because they have success and postseason success.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's why Brady stopped it for. Like he said, if he had to add a 5th, but I think that's why he stopped at his top 4. Don, what's your thoughts here?
Well, I think there's a lot of credibility to the fact that they're listing people based on past. Mahomes is at the top, of course. Josh Allen had some great years, but the last 2 years he's kind of struggled. He's not the guy he used to be. Hopefully, he can recapture that magic. I don't even know if he belongs on that list, but I know Mahomes. I would definitely put someone like C.J. Stroud in there, who I think is overlooked. He's turned the Texans around. I mean, that guy is. He may not have some of the stats, but he wins, and he's still young, and he's the guy to look at. So, I mean, Joe Burrow. I like Joe Burrow, but again, as pointed out, his win-loss record isn't what you think of as great quarterbacks. Of course, you got to take into account supporting cast. Notice none of them mentioned Dak Prescott, and there's people in Texas who think that Dak Prescott is, the best thing since sliced bread, and he does have a good supporting cast, and he still hasn't won. So, when you make up your list of your top quarterbacks, top running backs, top receivers, there's always the intangibles that don't make the stats. And if you just base it on stats, that could be misleading. The only stat I'm really interested in is the one loss. How many wins you got?
Well, I mean, if you were doing this off of stats, Kirk Cousins would always be up there.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That dude is a 4,500-yard guy every year.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if you need him when it matters,
There you go. There you go. Who you going to put Grandma's insulin money on? There you go. Don, Brady says that the game is being dumbed down to accommodate the rookie QBs. What's your thoughts? Do you agree with Brady or not, Don?
Well, I'm play Switzerland on this. I'm being neutral because I don't know what rubric he's going by as far as dumbing down the game. What's the rubric? What's the rationale behind him saying that? Are offensive coordinators, trimming the playbook? It's definitely not the rules, because the rules have been protecting all quarterbacks, rookie and vets. So I don't know what his rationale is for saying that.
I think some of it is not necessarily having to go through a 5-read offense, because so many of these guys are dual threats.
Yeah.
So you're not having to do the diagnosis of a defense the way that they used to. One of the things that was a real problem when I was at the Seahawks, training camps, was watching Sam Howell. After his second read, he's running. Even in practice, you can't even hit the guy. Second read, off to the races. And, so if you're looking at it from a pure passer type of position, then he's kind of not wrong, right? Because when you were a statue back there, those 5 reads mattered because you weren't outrunning anybody, right? So you were going through your progression and then finding your outlet guy. And a lot of times in this new, where everybody's a dual threat, your outlet is your legs. And so a lot of these guys really kind of limit how far they go through their progressions. So I don't think he's entirely wrong. But it's a different era of football as well.
Right.
What's your thought there, Dave?
Well, I mean, first of all, it would be dumb of an offensive coordinator not to simplify his offense around his rookie quarterback. You don't want to automatically throw him and expect him to be a 10-year veteran and to be able to go through the reads and to go through all the decision making that a journeyman quarterback is going to be able to do because of their experience. So, of course, offensive coordinators are going to simplify their playbook. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger, when he started out, he was handing off the ball. If he threw the ball 25 times in a game, that was a lot early in his career. And as, Bo mentioned, the game has changed somewhat. And the other thing that I would look at, the other thing that the coordinators and teams have to face is they have less time to install an offense. They've cut back to 3 preseason games. They a number of years ago, the previous CBA, they did away with 2-a-day practices. And so now there's a lot less time for teams to install offenses. And so I think, and that's been within the last 10 or 15 years. And so it's different from when Tom Brady started out. And plus, he's a unique individual, aside from having the referees in his pocket. But
I mean,
so I think I understand what he's saying is the game may appear to be being dumbed down, but I think in the case of rookie quarterbacks, of course it is, and it should be. You allow them to progress. That might be one of the reasons why CJ Stroud isn't lighting everything up. They're trying to win games around the team, and CJ Stroud is enabling them to do that. A couple years from now, we may see a completely different CJ Stroud that's taking over games, kind of like Ben did for the Steelers, where he, instead of depending on their defense and the running game, he was winning games for the team.
Brady was that same way. That's the thing that's funny about it, is Brady was exactly that. Like
right.
those first ones, that was defense driven. He wasn't out there being the dude. Like that came later.
Yeah.
So staying with you here, Dave. Do the airplanes have to have a MVP season from ayahuasca to make it to the AFC Championship round?
I don't even I kind of doubt that Aaron Rodgers is even going to complete the season. I don't understand. He's coming off a very significant injury. And injury to your Achilles is very significant, and the loss of mobility is huge. And so I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to quarterback the team for an entire 17 game season, much less, go into the playoffs. Now, if they do get to the playoffs, I think a lot of it's going to have to do with their defense. I think that there might be some other factors in there. I don't think it's Aaron Rodgers making the difference. I could be wrong there. Maybe maybe there's something to the ayahuasca that somehow has some will convince his tendons to be young again and uninjured. But I want to see him play a couple games before I start saying, hey, this guy, he has the old magic. I'm not there yet.
Isn't their first game against the 49ers? I think Joey Bosa is salivating here.
So the thing that's funny is the guy that created that injury for him is now a Niner. So he gets to face him week 1 again. Just food for thought. But let's say he makes it through the season, I don't think he has to have an MVP year, but he has to have a very good year to get to the championship game, because their defense is elite. I'll give them that. Their defense is no joke. They're able to win a lot of games despite the fact that they had nobody throwing the ball. But I don't think he's going to be an MVP caliber quarterback again. I think that period of his career is done. Because if you think back to his final year in Green Bay, it wasn't a great outing. And Jordan Love had a decent season with basically the same guys he couldn't win with. So, it's I don't think he's washed by any means, but I don't think his MVP caliber play days are still in front of him. But if he can be just above average, if he can be a top 10 caliber quarterback, then, they're a playoff team, right? Especially with the Bills taking a step back, the Patriots not being a factor, and the fact that the Dolphins may not still have defense. So, a lot of their games are going to be track meets. That makes me think that the Jets probably aren't division winners, but they could be a wild card team. I wouldn't rule it out. Now, I happen to agree with Dave that he doesn't make it through the season, but hypothetically, if he did, I think they could be a wild card team.
Don, what do you think?
Oh my! The Jets are terrible, and I agree. I don't know if he'll make it through, the first 6 games. Look, if he were, 31 instead of 41, you can make the case. But guys, I'm telling you, your body does not recover like it did when you're a youngster. That's just part of getting old. It's part of aging. And the fact that he set out last year, he's got a lot of rust. Going through camp and going to weight room and all that, that's different than live action, professional football.
Running away from Joey Bosa.
That's
exactly.
Right. And he doesn't even have the preseason reps. They sat him even during practice.
Yeah.
So, to your point, he's going to be rusty. There's no doubt.
And his offensive line is maybe average. So, you got to think about that.
Okay. Bo, you mentioned that you had been at the Seahawks training camp.
Yep.
You want to fill us in on that? And what do you think? Is it the 49ers and the also-rans in the NFC West?
So the Niners are going to be your
You're
division winner.
struggling. You're struggling there, Bo. You're
Yeah, no,
struggling.
so the Niners are going to be the division winner. They have one more year of their dominant run here, because now after this year they got to start paying people, and talent's going to start falling away. When it comes to the Rams and the Seahawks, I think they actually both end up as a 9-8 team. I think the Seahawks end up as that tiebreaker winner, is kind of how I see this division playing out. There's it was interesting being at the camp, because Sam Howell couldn't complete pretty easy passes, and of course when you're in practice you don't get hit, right? No one's allowed to touch you, so if you're not able to complete those passes, it's worrisome, right? Now in preseason we were watching him complete those. Now, albeit it's preseason and you're throwing against guys that are probably not going to be in the league, but that being said, he was able to complete those passes that I watched him not completing in practice. So it means he's a gamer, right? And if he's your backup, a gamer is helpful, because he's not going to get all the reps in practice, but he'll manage to complete them during the game. I'm with that. That being said, I think it might hurt his ability to ever be a starter again if you don't look good in practice, because if you get a guy behind you that shows out and then looks good through preseason, especially if you're wearing Seahawks colors, you've seen that not work out for the guy that was already there, right? Matt Flynn, great example, got paid a lot of money. Russell Wilson outworked him in practice and preseason, and Matt Flynn never took a snap. Now he got paid, so hey, good on him. But I don't think that Sam Howell's ever going to be the guy here in Seattle. But and then there was also weird stuff, a lot of fights in our practices, and scuffles I don't mind, right? If there's some pushing and shoving, like I'm good with that, because you got 45 guys trying for the last 10 roster spots, right? I mean, you got 96 in camp, you got 53 when it's all said and done. So if there's some competitive scuffles, I'm with that. But when we had, Jake Bobo get punched in the face, his helmet ripped off, punched in the face, like that's not a great look. You got DK ripping someone's helmet off and swinging it at him. Also not great. You guys are familiar with that action. So good old Mason Rudolph action. So it's not a good look. And of course the guy that was swinging the helmet was DK. So then you're immediately thinking, great, is this another year where he has a lot of personal fouls after the play because he can't get his head right? So there's a lot of things that came out of practice, and I'm like, man, I hope this gets buttoned up.
Bo, I know you have to go, so why don't you give us your final thoughts? As usual, good having you around. We are not going to be on probably that much longer. It's a non-Bill Carroll night, so I shouldn't. I take that back. I'm not blaming Bill. But anyway, Bo, give us your final thoughts before you leave us.
Yeah, so parting shot. It's a shout out to Shaquem Griffin. He was a UCF guy. They brought him down there to do some public speaking, and they honored him by inducting him into the UCF Hall of Fame. And so very cool. He was an absolute beast when he was there. A little bit shorter career in the NFL, but absolute stud in college. And so happy for him to get those Hall of Fame honors. And of course, he was a Seahawk. So pretty cool. But so that's it. I will jump out of here. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks again for having me on, guys.
All right.
Hey, good seeing you again, Bo.
Yep.
All right. You guys, you have a good one, Bo. Okay, guys, let's see. Getting back on track here. I want to talk a little bit about Tua. And hopefully both you guys did get a chance to at least glimpse through this. I know, Dave, you haven't been back that long, and you're concentrate mostly on the Steelers. But what did you think of Tua's assessment of Brian Flores as his head coach? Tua referred to Flores as a terrible person. Um, and then what did you think of Flores' response, saying that, they both kind of grown, so forth and so on. Kind of the usual cliche without being disrespectful or even, I thought, even given a lot of backlash to Tua. Uh, Don, what did you think about this?
Well, so I think that the fact that Tua is starting to have good years again out of Flores' shadow says a lot. We talk about players who go to different teams, sign different contracts, and we always say, maybe they just need to change the scenery. Well, Exhibit 1, Tua. He has his change of scenery. He's starting to thrive a little bit. I'm not going to make a judgment whether he's right or wrong about Flores, but the fact that he's doing better, the fact that he said it tells me that in his mind, it was Brian Flores was, maybe holding him back or maybe, I don't know, being mentally abusive, whatever the term is nowadays they use. But and I think Flores' response, he was saying a lot without saying it. He's more like, yeah, okay, so we just don't get along, but that's okay, So as long as both are happy now, I guess that's fine. But I think there's something to the fact that Tua is actually performing the way that people expected him to when he came out of Alabama.
What's your thoughts here, Dave?
Well, it kind of reminds me of the old Terry Bradshaw, Chuck Noll relationship. But I got to say, my immediate reaction, I think less of Tua and more of Brian Flores. I mean, Brian Flores has been gone from Miami for how many years? And Tua is making negative statements. What does that have to do with winning now? And so to me, I think that Tua took the negative track in order to kind of explain away, his injuries and the issues that he had in his first couple of seasons. And, the way I look at the remarks from Flores, hey, he's taking the high road. Hey, not only was he saying that there's something that Tua could learn, he's saying there's something that he could learn. And so to me, I respect that a lot more than Tua sitting there crying over spilt milk. Their relationship was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so again, but in some, I think more of Brian Flores, less of Tua in this exchange. Now, the other reason I kind of give the edge for Brian Flores is his year in Pittsburgh. Everybody spoke. Now, he wasn't the head coach, but, he had an influence with that team. And everybody on both offense and defense from the Steelers, they sung Brian Flores praises. And, and I haven't heard much from Minnesota in terms of Brian Flores being a, quote, terrible person. So I think that says more about Tua. Tua's remarks says more about him than it reflects on Brian Flores.
Okay. Dave, the Falcons acquired linebacker Matthew Judon from the Patriots for a third-round pick. Do you think that the Patriots were trying to avoid an Hassan Reddick situation here, Dave?
Well, I mean, they got a third-round pick for a 32-year-old veteran that was on injured reserve last year. I think New England had a good deal and they took it. How much more juice does Matthew Judon have? 32 years old, coming off of an injury. Maybe he does. but I don't see this as the same as Hassan Reddick, who's a bit younger, has a little bit more leverage. And in Matthew Judon's thing is what he told the Falcons. He wants to prove himself. So he doesn't want to jerk around. He recognizes that, hey, he doesn't have a lot of leverage. He has to prove himself. So I think it's a little bit different than the Hassan Reddick situation.
What's your thoughts there, Don?
Can you repeat the question?
We're talking about the Falcons. They got Matthew Judon for a third-round pick. And we're saying, do you think that the Pats were trying to avoid a Hassan Reddick situation? Or do you agree with Dave? You know, a third-round pick for a 32-year-old sounded pretty good.
I think, it makes good business sense just from, outside looking in. I mean, when you can, like, I mean, third rounder, that's not a bad deal. There's a lot of third rounders on teams in making Pro Bowls. So I have no qualms with that. I mean, that's their, front office decision, but I think it's a win situation.
Don, can you kind of give us some updates on what's going on there in Texas? From what we hear, CD and Jerry might be close to a deal. Yes. But then we also, when you look at, the Texans, there's a lot of positive news coming out of their camp also. What's your thoughts here, Don? Who gets does CD get his deal? Have you heard anything else about Micah? We all know that you kind of favor the Texans here, but what's your thoughts there, Don?
Well, I think a deal with CD and Jerry will be done probably within a week. That's my guess. I think by opening day, first week of football, I think CD will be catching passes from Dak. Texans, as far as the Texans go, I have not heard any negative coming out of their camp. Everything has been, very optimistic. Hopefully they get C.J. Stroud to avoid the sophomore curse, as they call it. But I think the Texans are going to surprise some people, guys. I really do. The AFC is tough because you got to go through, Kansas City but the rest of the league is very beatable. I mean, the Buffalo has shown that they're inconsistent, and Baltimore will always be tough. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I think the Texans are in pole position.
Hey, Don, I don't agree with part of what you said.
Well, go ahead, Dave.
Well, Don was saying, if I understood him right, that Texas might surprise some people. The Texans. I don't think that they're going to. They did very well last year, and they've actually strengthened their roster from a good team last year. So I think they've kind of put all the rest of the teams on alert that they're for real.
Okay, let me ask you this.
So
go ahead, Don.
Well, I was kind of speaking from a historical perspective, but the Texans have been not very good, in a 5-year span. But yeah, you're right. Last year, because of the success they had, you're right. They're probably not going to surprise people after all.
Guys, let me ask you this. Who do you think has a better season as a running back? Ezekiel Elliott or Joe Mixon with the Texans? Doesn't matter who puts their foot first. Go ahead.
So what's your rubric for success? Is it yards gained, yards per carry, touchdowns?
Uh, let's say overall yards and team record.
I'm going to say Joe Mixon. Now, because you said team record, and the fact that when the final gun goes off, he's going to be a much happier person at the end of the season than Ezekiel Elliott, and happiness is success, right? So, I think Zeke is, he's descending in his with his talent. Age catches all of us, right? Father time, but I think Mixon will have a better season.
What do you think, Dave? I'm kind of glad to get Mixon out of the AFC.
Yeah,
it's out of the AFC North myself.
and I think he's glad too. So I would kind of say, yeah, if he could stay healthy, I would go with Mixon. Because now he's in an entirely new division. He's with a whole new team that's really on the upswing. Cincinnati's been good, but the problem with Cincinnati, they've always had this stigma about them. And I would say Mixon. Ezekiel Elliott, maybe he has better stats. Just simply because I see the Texans kind of moving the ball around. But then, the Texans, if they got CeeDee Lamb, I mean, they got a lot of weapons too. But I'll go with Mixon. Just he has like a new home, a new place to prove himself.
Okay. Don, now that we know that C.J. McCartney might be out anywhere from a few weeks to the rest of the season, how do you think this impacts the Vikings?
Ooh, yeah, that was a big shot when to lose your QB1. I don't know. We'll see how they respond.
Sam Darnold, who was the guy that they signed today? They signed somebody they signed today. I forget who it was.
I have to look at that, but I think Darnold will he'll definitely be the quarterback, opening week and maybe second week. Hey, he's capable of leading that team. I mean, he doesn't have to be on fire all day. I mean, he just needs to be competent, move the ball, avoid turnovers, and control the game. He doesn't need to be the superstar. So I think it's a bloated team when it happens, but we'll see how they respond.
Dave, what do you think? I mean, there's also the possible of losing Addison. You got a brand new backfield.
Well, you have to have somebody that you can trust behind center to start. And are they going to be satisfied to go with Sam Darnold through the entire season? I don't know. I know that there were some people from Pittsburgh saying, "Oh, well, they should trade Russ Wilson to the Vikings." That was the story there. But I think that the Vikings are going to start overturning rocks to find a quarterback. They have Nick Mullins. I think that's the second quarterback. So they're going to try to find somebody else. And like Don said, I mean, that's a big blow. You had all your plans geared around this one guy leading the way, and I don't know if Sam Darnold's it. I don't think so. And then who's behind him? I mean, it's one thing to have Sam Darnold backing up McCarthy, but Mullins backing up.
Didn't they sign Howell or somebody named like some guy that only Bill knows?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that they're going to have to go shopping. They're going to have to find somebody else to add to that quarterback room.
Well, Dave, you've been gone for a little bit, but I know that you caught up quickly. I saw you on your Monday night show. But head coach Mike Tomlin calls his QB evaluation an incomplete study after the offense struggled against the Bills. Art Smith says that the offensive effort was not acceptable, but better now than in September. I don't know how many times I've heard that. And our starting center, Nick Herbig, was placed on IR and is out for the season. Make me feel optimistic about our team here.
Well, that's kind of tough to do right now. But, I agree with Mike Tomlin's incomplete study. You couldn't really evaluate Russell Wilson's performance against the Bills because he had no offensive line. And the primary person was Broderick Jones, their first round draft pick from 2 years ago or a year ago. He was just getting thrown aside like a rag doll, and he was in on Russ Wilson, by the time he was setting up to pass the ball. And I think he got sacked 3 times in 4 drives. So I think the evaluation isn't complete simply because they haven't been able to keep their quarterbacks upright. Last week, the previous week, you had the muff snaps between Herbig and Justin Fields. Now, this week, you didn't have any muff snaps, but the offensive line play was horrendous. Now, Zach Frazier seems to have done good, and what this does is losing Nate Herbig for the year. They did put him on IR, which means he's not eligible to return. That means that they're accelerating the development of Zach Frazier to be the number 1 center. Now, what happens behind Frazier? You still have Ryan McCollum that has some experience. You have Spencer Anderson, second-year player that has played all the offensive line plays. And then you got Mason McCormick, a draft pick that's starting to get some snaps. But the concern is around the tackles. And you got Broderick Jones. He was going to be on the left tackle. They were going to put him at home at left tackle, bring Troy Fautanu in at right tackle, but then Fautanu got hurt. So then that meant that you brought Jones over to right tackle. But the performance he had, I don't care if he was left tackle or right tackle, he was just being tossed aside. It was one-on-one football, and he was getting beat bad. And so I'm just wondering whether
by
Dan
non-starters. Well,
he was getting beat by their starting tackle. The guy that was beating him is no joke. But it still, horrible. It just looked bad. I would not be surprised if they start the season with Dan Moore at left tackle and Fautanu, if he's healthy enough, comes in at right tackle. But then that creates problems of its own because now you got a rookie at center and you got a rookie at tackle. And so we could see some growing pains there. But in terms of the quarterback evaluation, that's hard to tell. There was a spark when Justin Fields came into the game. And it's just his athleticism, his ability to elude the rush and to run, which he did in Chicago. But then the problem is you got a 4th and 2 instead of handing off to the running back, he keeps and he loses 10 yards. And so it's his decision making. So I believe that Russell Wilson will be the starting quarterback week 1 with Justin Fields, maybe getting some looks in there. And it's going to be very interesting cut down day. And I'm very thankful that all the Brandon Ayuk talk has kind of died down a little bit.
Yeah. But we still need a number 1 wide receiver.
Well, I'm not convinced that they do. I mean, and this is the reason why. Now, number one is Arthur Smith. He plays more 12 and 13 personnel than just about any other coordinator in the league, which means he's not playing 3 wide receiver sets. And so he's more into spreading the ball out to the running backs, getting the tight ends involved in the field. So in order to everybody's saying, oh, well, we need, DK Metcalf or CeeDee Lamb or Ayuk to go with Pickens so that they just don't double team him. Well, in a Smith offense, the idea is you got Pat Freiermuth going down the seam, or Broderick Jones even going down the seam, or you got a running back over here, and then that's what's freeing up. And if George Pickens is covered, well, then you have these other outlets to go to. We'll see. The problem right now, the impact that the Ayuk situation has, is that Pittsburgh came to an agreement with him if the trade goes through with San Francisco, which means that's tied up like $28 million, which is preventing them from doing an extension with Pat Freiermuth or an extension with Cam Hayward or a new contract for Najee Harris. It's kind of stifled their ability to move until the Ayuk situation is settled, because they can't spend that money, because then if all of a sudden the trade happens, then that throws their salary cap asunder. So that's the impact that Ayuk situation is having, and it's not good for Pittsburgh. They've lost the flexibility to spend that money until the situation's resolved.
Glad you clarified that also. Don, glad to see that you were able to stick around here with us. Why don't you give us your final thoughts for the evening, Don?
Okay, final thoughts. So back in 2009, college football, we had 3 highly touted, remarkable quarterbacks play their senior years. We had a guy named Sam Bradford out of Oklahoma, Tim Tebow out of Florida, and Colt McCoy out of Texas. Of those 3, Colt McCoy had the longest NFL career of the 3, and he just announced his retirement the day before yesterday. Great guy, Colt McCoy. I've met him a few times. He's spoken to like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes at our school. Real involved in the ministry. Great guy. Has a beautiful wife, and he is just a great human being. And I knew that his time was limited when he got released by the Cardinals. The Cardinals didn't have a backup quarterback, so that I don't know, something was fishy about that. But he's not bitter. He had a great career. He has a great life, and he just signed a contract, I think, with Fox Sports to do the Big Ten broadcast. So if you're up in the Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, you'll see Colt McCoy in the booth as an analyst. So great job, Colt McCoy. Going to miss you.
I didn't know he was Italian, but yeah. Dave, your final thoughts for the evening?
Yeah, I remember Colt McCoy's debut in the NFL when James Harrison welcomed him into the league. I don't think he has fond memories of that, but great that he was able to last this long in a competitive league, though. So for my final thoughts, I'm just going to go back to a couple weeks ago, because I wasn't able to join you during all the Olympic Games. And I think you guys know that I'm no fan of the NBA. I don't watch it. I don't like the game. I don't like the product that they put out. However, I got to say, I watched a lot of the Olympic basketball, both men's and women's. But watching the USA team for me was really fascinating. I really enjoyed the games. You had several guys that are guaranteed to be Hall of Famers. And he had other teams that also had good players that were Serbia, for example, was giving them all they could take. And I got to say that the USA team, men's team, they really maintained their composure. They hung in there. And I like the Olympic basketball, the international basketball with 4 quarters. So typically in basketball, you have 2 halves. So you're looking at the end of the first half, and then you don't have to watch the game until the final 2 minutes to really be into the game. Well, with the 4 quarters, this got you vested, right away. What's going to happen at the end of that first quarter? Who's going to get that final score? Is that going to give them a leg up? I like the refereeing. I thought it was a more physical game in a way. And the referees, though, were allowing the players to play ball. And I actually enjoyed watching that basketball. And I got to say that the USA team, that they really rallied, and it was impressive. Some of these teams, France, Serbia, they have NBA players too. France has a guy that's waiting for the NBA to call him, but it showed what a good team can do, even playing against a team that man for man is much more talented. But the USA team, they stuck it together, and I really enjoyed those games.
Dave, what was your impression of the women's game, winning by 1 point when we thought it was going to be a blowout?
Yeah, well, I kept on wondering, did they have the best players out there? And you know who I'm thinking of. But they did what they had to do. And I thought that they played some good basketball. I enjoyed it. I just hope that with the women's team, just pick the best players, and don't it's not, to me, it shouldn't be that hard. And I think that they can reassert themselves as the dominant team in women's basketball.
One more question. Do you think that this is going to be Katie's last Olympics, or do you think she'll be back for 2028 out here in LA?
Man, wouldn't it be great to finish up your career at home in LA? I mean, how old will she be?
I'm not sure. What, 34, 32?
Yeah. I mean, it's a big commitment, but if she's in any way into it, I think that would be a great way. That's the way I would want to cap my Olympic career, is right at home and in front of the hometown fans. Because that was the other thing in these games. The French fans, especially when you're watching the French games, but even with the other teams when Serbia was playing, these teams were really into it. The fans were really into it. So I would hope that she gets a shot.
All right, guys. Well, hey, great discussions this afternoon. Glad everyone could join us. Appreciate you, Don, sticking around. Appreciate you, Dave. First show back. We look forward to the other guys join us. Demetrius and the other guys join us next week. I know Reggie will be back. So have a great weekend, everyone. And hey, we'll see you next week right here on the SPORTSKRIB. Have a good night, everyone.
Night, guys.
All right, take care.